nuclear reactor, along with all of its fuel.
We went from being overdramatic to completely failing to understand nuclear physics and nuclear engineering. Welcome back to my reaction of how a nuclear war would actually go down by Flashback history. This is part 2. If you haven't seen part 1, check out the pinned comment down below. Let's continue. Incoming. All right.
We left our scenario at 30 seconds after the initial launch. So far, no bomb has struck Washington, D.C. yet.
Glad he's keeping that. No super fast nuclear weapons, sci-fi nuclear weapons are being used.
In fact, security experts across the US's early surveillance network don't really know if DC is the actual target, or if the nuke is heading towards somewhere else on the East Coast. They won't get full confirmation until 7 minutes and 30 seconds from now.
That's actually a reasonable assessment. Again, they had the space-based infrared detection during launch. Could let you know right away, but had a lot of uncertainty. And then they have ground-based radar, which is slower to respond, but a lot more precise. So minutes of uncertainty is real, but decisions are not being made in a state of panic. They're going to be following a highly rehearsed protocols.
But, for the moment, they're pretty sure a strike is imminent and they are acting accordingly. It is a jaw-dropping moment. This is the one scenario that every high-ranking defense expert and nuclear official has spent their life dreading, planning for, losing sleep over, obsessing the details of. Inside the rooms that are processing this data, the mood is one of disbelief, panic, and grim procedural execution.
Why are you adding panic to grim procedural execution? I mean, the grim procedural execution is right, but it wouldn't be panicked because they've trained for this constantly. And they're just going to stick to their procedures. They're structured, they're checklist driven, they're redundant. It's controlled urgency. It's like when we do scenarios on nuclear accidents at the nuclear power plant all the time. You don't panic. I mean, in order to get licensed, to get qualified to operate a nuclear power plant, you're evaluated, not just a written exam, but you're evaluated for how you do in the simulator individually and as a team. People who are jumpy and panicky, they simply don't pass. And these evaluations happen regularly. At the plant I worked at, there is a simulator exam in front of the regulator once a year and a written exam once every 2 years. And those are just the ones in front of the regulator. You do drills week after week. I would imagine these sort of teams, considering the stakes are far higher than one nuclear plant, operate under a similar mindset of cold-driven urgency and procedure. Not to say you can't adapt, because any procedure is going to have contingencies alongside if certain resources are not available for whatever reason.
These people are highly trained to hold their nerves and do their jobs.
Okay, well then why'd you say they panicked? Yes, that's right.
No matter the circumstances. At STRATCOM, the Strategic Command Center based in Nebraska, the muscle of the US nuclear defense, the priority is to get something called the blue clock ticking. The second that the North Korean ICBM launched from its silo, the red clock has already begun counting down. This is...
Oh, okay. This isn't red versus blue gamified stuff. What he means by this, and again, I don't know if this is from the source he's referencing, the Jacobson source scenario, but you do have attack, assessment timelines, and response option timelines associated with each of your launch readiness states. So he's taking into consideration what stage of the attack there is, and are they ready to respond in which different way. Okay.
Is the clock that indicates the time until the incoming attack actually lands. The blue clock...
To my knowledge, there's no red versus blue official doom clocks. Could be wrong about that, but that sounds weird and needlessly oversimplifying things.
which Stratcom is now determined to get ticking, is the US nuclear response to the attack. If the blue clock doesn't start ticking soon, the US will miss its window of opportunity to strike back.
And then if they fire at the same time, you get the purple clock. Come on.
This matters because fear of retaliation is the logic that drives nuclear war strategy.
That's right. He's talking about mutual assured destruction, where the goal isn't to win nuclear war, like there's some objective you need to take or something like that. It's to make it unwinnable, to make the idea of starting one so ridiculous, so ludicrous that no one in their right mind would even attempt such a thing.
To that end, each nuclear-armed nation has extensively practiced and rehearsed procedures to ensure that no matter how successful an incoming nuclear attack may be, an overwhelming response is always guaranteed. The blue clock is part of the process that ensures America will always be able to retaliate to any attack, even if...
Maybe he's just making this up for the purpose of storytelling, but I don't know. I'm not aware of red clock versus blue clock.
It's a full assault from hundreds or thousands of warheads, and not just the lone missile currently coming in from North Korea. While Stratcom gets systems ready to begin the blue clock, the Pentagon has another very important job to do. They are preparing to notify the president of the incoming strike. At 3:05 a.m., just 5 minutes after the launch, the president is woken up by an aide. There's an urgent call from the Pentagon. On this call, he is frankly told that early surveillance systems have detected an incoming missile launch from North Korea. Right now, they're waiting for confirmation from ground-based radar systems, but they're pretty sure a missile is heading to the eastern coast of the continental United States. At this stage, the president is also informed, or I should say reminded, that he has only 6 minutes to make a decision.
Now that time is very scenario specific. It's plausible. They can be short. They're not always that short, these decision windows. And it depends on the launch detection confidence and the overall attack profile. And again, there are pre-planned response options. He doesn't have to come up with an entire plan within 6 minutes. Just like at nuclear power plants, you have system-based emergency response procedures, so you don't have to improvise, make up a response on time. It's about recognizing the event, diagnosing the event, and responding in the proper way. Now, the nuclear power plant, in a lot of cases, it's make sure your automatic safety systems did their job. This is obviously harder.
About how to respond to the attack. If he takes any longer, the US will not be able to respond before the incoming attack wreaks havoc on its response infrastructure. 6 minutes to decide the fate of millions.
Nice dramatic pause.
Perhaps billions of people, both right here in the United States and on the other side of the world.
Really? I mean, I appreciate this for making an engaging story, but it's not just what you do in 6 minutes.
It's an impossible task. And to make matters worse, most US
It's not at all impossible. It's something that's regularly rehearsed and briefed and planned for.
presidents spend very little, if any time at all, considering the strategy or procedure during a nuclear exchange.
Presidents receive training, specifically nuclear command authority training, and they receive regular strategic briefings from their advisor, as well as continuity of government contingency plans.
It is an unthinkable situation, and for that reason, many take false security in the consensus that it is very, very unlikely to happen. And so,
I mean, that's true, and I think what he's driving at is, I doubt a sitting president sits and thinks about nuclear war for an extended period of time. I mean, to be fair, when I worked in the control room of a nuclear power plant, I didn't think constantly, are we going to have a meltdown this shift? You know? Now, what you do think about, though, is your system status. Do you have all of your safety equipment available. And for stuff that are out of service, for planned maintenance, for instance, you ensure that you have appropriate compensatory measures in place. So I'm sure on the president's agenda involves some sort of operational readiness briefing. So you could argue that he doesn't think about the end of the world nuclear war scenario very much every day, but definitely as part of being commander-in-chief, part of the job is to have briefings. And every time you have a briefing, you can argue that you're thinking about to what extent you need to exert your role as commander-in-chief, and that includes all the scenarios that you've postulated. So the president isn't an expert, but they're not exactly an unprepared civilian either.
Nuclear war falls into one of hundreds of concerns that occupy a sitting president's mind.
Sure.
But here it is at 3:05 a.m.
Always
out
at
of the
3 a.m.
blue. Not just likely, but happening. As if this wasn't bad enough, it's at this exact moment that the Secret Service interrupts the president and begins the process of extracting him to safety, quite literally dragging him out of his quarters and towards the PEOC, or the Presidential Emergency Operations Center.
I mean, yeah, he'd be moved, depending on the president. Would they need to physically drag him? Not sure what kind of shape he's in, physically or mentally, maybe. But sure, it's a coordinated continuity of government protocol.
In the East Wing of the White House. The Secret Service are not part of the nuclear response processes. Their only priority is the continued survival of the president. And so,
Sure.
as he is whisked away to PEOC, phones are buzzing, people are shouting, aides are running back and forth along the hallways, the president himself desperate to find someone who can get North Korea on the line, but no one can get through. As pandemonium erupts inside the White House, the US Nuclear Defense Network decides to play its trump card.
He used that one intentionally, didn't he? In light of who's president.
Perhaps they can intercept this incoming ICBM. The US has 44 of these missile interceptors, but only 4 of them, which are based in California, are in the right place to be able to strike down the incoming missile. In good conditions, with advanced warning and controlled tests, these interceptors have a success rate of around 45%.
Okay, now he's referencing the Jacobson scenario again. And this is specifically talking about ground-based mid-course defense. So, interception is extremely difficult. The actual success rates have some confidence intervals, some uncertainty margin associated with them, and it's quite classified. 45%, I have no idea if that's real or not. That actually sounds a little optimistic to me. But again, that's during tests. I'm sure that's test data, because obviously there hasn't been a real nuclear war where those devices were used. So, interesting. One thing he said that might actually be more optimistic than real life.
ICBMs and the interceptors move so fast at tens of thousands of kilometers per hour that the whole process is akin to shooting a bullet with a bullet.
And they're going way faster than bullet. They are going to be hypersonic, quite hypersonic. And missile defense by itself is not reliable enough to depend on.
One by one, all 4 interceptors are fired at the incoming missile. One by one, all 4 fail.
I mean, that's certainly possible. So 55% to the 4th power, assuming these are fully independent events and no common mode failure is occurring. That figures out to about a 9% chance that all 4 of those interceptors fail. So not likely, but certainly possible. Again, if you take that 45% as gospel. But in nuclear defense planning, they are not expected to be relied on.
The last interceptor misses by only inches. But an inch is as good as a mile in this situation.
Got to make it dramatic, right?
With that, the last and only line of defense against an incoming attack has failed. The president is now the only one who can make a decision about what to do next.
Big sticks Teddy Roosevelt.
10 minutes have now passed since North Korea launched its ICBM. After being confirmed by ground-based radar systems, they're certain that the intended target is Washington, D.C. The president is in the POC, or the
That's reasonable at this phase.
Emergency Operations Center, and here he has a few moments of quiet, during which time he inspects the nuclear football, a series of documents that allows the president to order a strike at any time from any place. Amongst these documents is something called the Black Book, sometimes grimly referred to only as the menu. Here, the president has a list of potential targets and the nuclear weapons available with which to strike them.
So targeting doctrine's going to want to prioritize military targets, command and control centers, and obviously their nuclear weapons.
Viable targets include major population centers, nuclear power plants, industrial complexes, and military bases.
Really? You're listing nuclear power plants as a target? There's no way those are primary targets. Civilian infrastructure can certainly be targeted, but nuclear power plants are hardened, not militarily decisive, and radiologically inefficient compared to nuclear weapons themselves. If that's what he's trying to do, get some sort of nuclear wombo combo going like you see in video games. Note, when I say hardened, I don't mean they can resist a direct hit with a nuclear weapon. No, they can't, but they can resist a detonation from several kilometers away compared to other civilian structures that would be destroyed by them. I have no idea where that comes from. Is that from the Jacobson scenario? Maybe, but why would you want to attack the enemy nuclear power plants? I mean, you're just trying to take out their grid. You're better off destroying distribution centers rather than generators if you're going to cause damage to the enemy grid. Assuming their grid is robust. I mean, this is North Korea after all, not exactly winning any awards for grid stability or their nuclear power plant design.
The weapons themselves are spread across America's nuclear triad. On land, 400 ICBM missiles sitting in silos across the US. In the air,
I like it. ICBM missiles, a bit like ATM machine, where the M in ICBM stands for missile.
66 nuclear-capable bombers, each able to carry multiple warheads, and finally at sea, 14 nuclear-armed submarines, which, like the bombers, carry multiple warheads. Every nuclear weapon that's listed in the Black Book is on hair-trigger standby.
Alright, this is a bit exaggerated. So ICBMs are on high readiness, submarines are survivable second strike, and bombers are recallable and flexible. So the system is designed for survivability and control. ICBM silos have the most amount of readiness because they're easy to find and easy to target. You can't exactly hide them, and they don't move. Whereas aircraft and submarines can move. So this isn't instant, uncontrolled launch.
Meaning that within mere moments of receiving a command, these weapons will be launched towards the enemy. But the only one who can actually pull the trigger is the US president. 5 minutes ago, that president was asleep.
By pull the actual trigger, he means give the order. The president doesn't have a physical trigger. I'm sure that's not even in the crazy scenario, but I've seen it in enough movies where there's like a laptop with a button inside the nuclear football or something, that it's one button that launches everything. I mean, there's authentication stuff, but you see this sort of thing in movies that gets pretty ridiculous pretty fast.
Now he, and he alone, holds the fate of humanity in his hands. By this stage, advisors have connected to speak to the president via satellite comms. Among them are the Secretary of Defense, the Joint Chief of Staff, and the Stratcom Commander. None of them agree on what to do next. Some of the advisors tell the president to wait and gather more information, and that most importantly, the first thing they need to do.
I mean, there's a handful of options that are trigger dependent. There might not be a unanimous decision here, but it's more like choosing from a list of options rather than, well, I guess we should just wait and see.
Is call Russia and China and advise them of their own possible retaliation against North Korea. But there's a problem. Russia isn't answering the phone. This has happened before. In 2022, a Russian missile landed in NATO territory in Poland. It took the US representative
Okay, yeah, good clarification there. Thanks for the correction. Flew through it but didn't land.
24 hours to get in touch with his Russian counterpart. Right now, they have less than 6 minutes. China, on the other hand, does pick up the phone, but then immediately forbids the US from launching a nuclear attack on North Korea. The fallout alone could kill hundreds of thousands of Chinese citizens, something which China would consider an act of war.
Depends on the level of the nuclear attack and depends which direction the wind's blowing. But obviously, I can see why they would say that, not necessarily fully analyze the absolute effect of that. So, okay. That's fair.
Whilst the advisors bicker and squabble about who to call, what to say, and what to do, the Stratcom commander continues to follow.
You gotta go with your decision tree.
His responsibility and get the blue clock ticking. He urges the president to select a means of retaliation, reminding him that the US is under attack by a nuclear weapon right now, and that with every second they don't respond, they lose their chance to do so. The more peaceably.
Though what's interesting, though, is if it really is, if they haven't detected any additional launches in this time, and it's just one missile heading for a city rather than any of the nuclear infrastructure, this mindset doesn't really apply in this scenario, at least not yet, because there's not nuclear weapons, nuclear missile silos sitting like in the White House or on the National Mall or some sort of thing like you see in some of those movies. So you're not about to lose your own nuclear arsenal at this point. And counterattacking isn't going to save anyone in DC. So I'm not sure this analogy works for this scenario unless more missiles are on the way and targeting your own nuclear weapon infrastructure.
Inclined are furious with Stratcom's single-minded focus on getting the president to flirt with world annihilation over one missile. But during this argument,
maybe they're arguing what I just said right there. It's like, okay, I mean, DC is going to be lost, assuming any other available interception methods didn't work out, which is, I guess, a given at this point. But yeah,
Sivers picks up a second missile launch from North Korea. This one headed to a power station in California.
Now this is where things start to change, and if they're going to be targeting nuclear launch facilities.
Due to the fact that California is all the way on the west coast, this missile...
Oh no, you're going to say it's going to hit a nuclear plant?
Missile will strike its target before the first missile lands in DC. The new target...
How much time has passed yet? It might be around the same time. I mean, it might differ by a couple of minutes. Or North Korea is using a super fast super nuclear missile or something. But given how much time has passed, I'm not sure I buy that. It might be close.
Is the Diablo Canyon nuclear power plant in Central California.
All right. That is a real facility. Why would you target that? It is a real facility, so they're not making up locations. But that is strategically questionable. It will not cripple U.S. response capability at all, and it does not meaningfully increase the amount of destruction. Okay, you're going to lose a generator. Prices of electricity are going to go up. But the grid is large enough to compensate unless this was a demand day. But here's the other reason. Even if this was considered a terror attack, here is the site getting hit by a 1 megaton nuclear weapon. Yeah, the power plant would be engulfed in the fireball for an airburst strike. But even these small towns next to it wouldn't get hit. Compared to an attack in the heart of DC, where, yes, the amount of destruction is going to be way more severe and way more terrifying. So why?
If the bomb aimed at DC would be destructive, this second target would be outright catastrophic.
It would be less severe in terms, okay, you're destroying generation capacity, and yeah, there's a lot of people that work there, but not compared to, but we're talking hundreds to a few thousand at most during a refueling outage or something, compared to a city with hundreds of thousands or millions in the larger metro area.
The same show that would go down in Washington would go down in California. People killed in horrific ways at horrifying scale.
Not really. People would be hit directly by the fireball, and a lot of the other destructive forces wouldn't affect that populated of an area. There's a reason why nuclear power plants are situated in areas that have a low population, just to make evacuation protocol easier. This attack would probably do... This attack, in the grand scheme of things, yeah, it would still be horrible, but it's not going to cause that much widespread destruction compared to an attack on DC. And again, this is with a 1 megaton nuclear weapon, which is ridiculously oversized, far beyond anything that North Korea has the capability of. And I'm just highballing for the sake of highballing, like what this scenario is highballing.
Firestorms, shockwaves, mushroom clouds. But this time, it wouldn't be a city blown open and scattered to the wind. It would be a nuclear reactor, along with all of its fuel.
Okay. All right. We went from being overdramatic to completely failing to understand nuclear physics and nuclear engineering. A nuclear weapon releases energy equivalent to hundreds of kilotons, a megaton if you highball it. A reactor contains stored radioactive material, not explosive energy. Even if the reactors are still operating, still not explosive energy. Those are completely different phenomena.
The vaporized core of the nuclear power station would fuse with soil and seawater, forming a...
How? You even just said it's vaporized. A direct hit might actually clean up a lot of that. But let's say it's not a direct hit. All right, the worst case radiological from the plant. Let's say it hits a kilometer or two away. Enough to destroy the building, but not completely vaporize it. Enough to destroy the buildings. In this case, the core would not vaporize. Certainly not disperse globally. By the way, if something like that were to disperse globally, it would be so diluted the effect would be negligible. But most of the fuel in this case, say a kilometer away, remains localized. The weapon's fireball might disperse some material, but it is not converting the reactor into some sort of sci-fi super weapon.
Poisonous storm front. Unthinkably radioactive fallout would settle on cities hundreds of kilometers away.
Fallout is highly dependent on weather, and it wouldn't be any worse with the reactor fuel. Nuclear weapon fallout is fission products plus neutron activation. Reactor fuel is already highly radioactive, but heavy and not easily aerosolized. It would fall out locally and not spread uniformly over the entire world.
Painting the ground with isotopes that whisper across half-lives of centuries.
This is ignorance.
The Pacific winds would carry contamination deep into the ocean currents, transforming fisheries, coral beds, and coastlines into quiet, spreading zones.
Is it going to awaken Godzilla next? I'm curious how ridiculous this is going to be.
Of genetic ruin.
Genetic ruin. Apocalyptic exaggeration at its finest. So here's the reality. Dilution in oceans is enormous. We saw that after Fukushima. It did not create ocean-wide ecological collapse. The release rates post-accident were well below International Atomic Energy Agency standards. Radiological impact is going to decrease rapidly with distance, too, in this case.
The entire region would be cordoned off, lost to humanity.
The Chernobyl exclusion zone is partially re-inhabited with thriving wildlife. Large areas have been reopened after the Fukushima disaster. I mean, look, radiation is dangerous, but not permanently sterilizing at large scales.
No man's land, far worse and far bigger than Chernobyl. No,
not even a little bit. Come on. We have case studies of actual nuclear detonations not causing devastation comparable to Chernobyl. There's Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and then there's all the nuclear weapons testing. Yes, people got dosed by weapons testing, and it was a lot worse than the government realized at the time. But we're not talking apocalyptic.
Where the very air would hum with the low electric dread of radiation.
You can't hear it. All right, let's put this section to bed. I'm sure there's more chicanery afoot. A nuclear weapon hitting a nuclear power plant is still bad, but not uniquely apocalyptic compared to, say, a nuclear weapon hitting anything else. The bomb already dominates the energy release by several orders of magnitude. Reactor material is not efficiently dispersed, and fallout physics are governed by particle size, the height of the burst, and the weather. A nuclear power plant's radioactive inventory will not contribute in a meaningful way to the amount of fallout. The greater impact would be the loss of a big generator on the overall grid, the overall electrical supply of California, but if your goal was to do that, you're better off hitting a major right-of-way, a major transmission section to cut off more cities from electricity. That would actually cause more damage to California than hitting Diablo Canyon, if that was your goal.
California would be finished.
How? Okay, so is it also going to cause a big earthquake or something? It's going to cause the old San Andreas fault to give, and California's just neatly going to break off to go hang out with Hawaii, like in that one old animation. Ugh. At this point, I can't help but feel like this is just designed to convey fear, where you go as far as to misrepresent the physics. And again, I think a lot of it does stem from the Jacobson scenario, a questionable source. Yeah, nuclear war is not the end of the world, because radiation isn't magic, fallout is not infinite, and nuking a nuclear power plant does not make nuclear weapons more spicy. But obviously none of that makes nuclear war acceptable, because it's still, even a non-extinction scenario, still looking at tens to hundreds of million lost, global economic collapse, and an unspeakable humanitarian crisis for years. I don't understand this need to exaggerate. You don't need exaggeration to make nuclear war terrifying. Reality already does that by itself. We're going to call it a part for now. Stay tuned for part 3.